Hi, I'm going to show you how to use a rotary cutter, a clear ruler, and a cutting mat. Anytime you are using a rotary cutter, you use it with these two other things, the clear ruler and the cutting mat. They go together. This is a rotary cutter. It has a blade that, as you slide along a surface, rotates and cuts fabric. This blade has the cover on it currently, so it won't cut anything. I can uncover that cover by sliding back this button, and then I can cut fabric. Now, some rotary cutters have a little red button on the side that's like a child lock, and then you squeeze a handle to uncover the cover. So there's some like this and some like that. Now, the rotary cutter blade is very sharp, and so unless you are cutting fabric at that moment, it needs to be closed. If you have set it aside for just a second, don't leave the blade open like this. If you bumped your hand against it, it would cut your hand, and that would not be good. So always keep it closed unless you are cutting fabric. This is a clear ruler. It's clear, so you can see measurements underneath, and so you can see your fabric that you are cutting. This is a cutting mat, also known as a self-healing mat, because it is resistant to the cuts that the rotary cutter makes. If you were to cut on a table, it would damage the table, so always cut with one of these mats under you. Now, in our classroom, we are always going to store these mats flat, parallel to the floor, because if we store them upright like this, the mat will warp and kind of bend permanently, and you won't be able to make very straight cuts on it. So we're always storing them flat. So I'm going to show you how to cut fabric. At this station, I would like you to cut a 4x4 square. That's what I would like you to cut, 4 inches by 4 inches square. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I start out by laying out my fabric. And even before I lay it out, I notice that right here in this corner, it says 23 inches. I'm going to use this self-healing mat to take the measurements for my 4x4 square, and it's going to be hard to take the measurements. So if you're on the wrong side of the cutting mat and you see the higher numbers in this corner, then you need to flip your cutting mat around. Okay, now I'm going to line up my fabric in this corner. This corner is 1 inch in and 1 inch up. Now I'm lining up at this corner so that I can see all of these measurement markings all the way across. When I line it up at this corner, I am making sure that my fabric is straight with this edge and straight with the bottom edge as much as possible. Okay, so to cut my 4x4 square, since I am 1 inch in, if I were to cut at the 4 line, I would end up with a 3-inch cut. So I need to cut at the 5 line. So I line up my ruler at this 5-inch line so that it goes against this, and that the bottom edge of the ruler is right up against this bottom line. If I am right-handed, I will line up the ruler on this line. If I am left-handed, I will line it up on this line. If I was left-handed, I would hold with this hand, cut with this hand. I am right-handed, and so I'm going to line up my ruler right here. I'm going to try and match it up with this little tick mark up here that I also know is the 5-inch line. But if my fabric was too long and went up past this little tick mark, then I would just try and make sure that my ruler was really in line with this line here at the bottom. Okay, so to cut, I uncover my blade, I hold down my hand, and I kind of am leaning over my fabric. putting some of my weight onto it to really hold this ruler down. None of my fingers should be hanging over the edge of this ruler because the rotary cutter will cut them. So I lean down, I'm pushing with my hand down on the ruler, and I'm going to slide this rotary cutter right along this ruler to cut. Now I'm to this point where the rotary cutter is in line with the top of my fingers. If I were to keep sliding all the way up, my ruler might shift to the side this way or this way, and I wouldn't get a straight cut, which is the whole point of cutting with a rotary cutter. So I'm going to walk up my hands, hold down at the top, kind of lean over and push down, and slide the rest of the way up. Okay, now I've got my straight cut. But before I move my ruler away, before I move my ruler at all, I'm going to pull this fabric away and see if it cut. And it did, which is awesome. If it didn't cut, sometimes it gets these little threads or pieces of sections of fabric that didn't cut all the way. I would take my scissors, and I know these are fabric scissors because they have fabric tied to them, right? That's how we tell the difference in our classroom. And I would come along with my scissors and cut away any spots that didn't get cut all the way. Okay, so I can move this fabric to the side. I have a 4-inch strip right here. Now I can turn this 4-inch strip to the side this way. I can line up along the 5-inch mark again because we're 1 inch in. And now I can really see this line all the way through. So I'm going to make sure my ruler's lined up with that. I'm going to hold the ruler down and slide this across. And immediately after I'm done cutting, I close that blade. I don't want to accidentally set it down and bump it. And now I have a 4-inch square. Perfect 4-inch square.